All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is our work readiness workshop focused on engineering, offered by our career education team. You'll see some of us career education counselors listening in and monitoring the chat, so feel free to say hi to us. And without further ado, I want to introduce our lovely speaker who is sharing their time with us today. We have Jimmy A. Galvez, who is a senior project manager at Sherwood Design Engineers. And I'm going to read a little bit about Jimmy to introduce him. So, always appreciative for the opportunity to pursue and shape his career and what he loves to do. With over 17 years of experience in the design and construction industry, Jimmy leads high-profile projects as project manager and engineer, working in multidisciplinary teams to bring successful, innovative, and sustainable solutions that make the difference in our environment and community, while building client and team relationships through projects in California, Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Latin America, and the Middle East. Recent work includes infill development, campus and community master planning, utility infrastructure planning and design, university campus, religious retreat centers, and parks' general civil engineering, while incorporating sustainable and low-impact development infrastructure. So the opportunity to apply science and engineering while incorporating innovation and pushing new frontiers in civil infrastructure, all while achieving the vision of architecture and landscape architecture, fellow professionals, through integrated design is beyond exciting, beyond exciting for Jimmy. And when he's not working, even when he's not enjoying great food, coffee, hiking, running, mountain biking, or some other weekend or outdoor adventure, then he's likely attending leadership or professional development events through now 20 years of involvement with SHIP and ASCE, that's the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. And Jimmy, you'll have to remind me what ASCE is, while serving on both local and national leadership roles. Through those organizations, he shares his knowledge and learns from others while inspiring future engineers from elementary school to high school students and providing mentorship to those at the university level, as well as young engineers already in industry. So with that impressive list of credentials and background experience, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Jimmy.
Thank you, Shelby. Greatly appreciate it to have the opportunity to share some thoughts with you guys and some of the things that I've come across through my career. Uh, ASCE is the American Society of Civil Engineers, so that's the other acronym. So yeah, I've been pretty involved with both organizations, and I know the intro was a bit of quite a bit of information, but at the core of things, I'm a civil engineer that loves to take care of infrastructure, design and implement infrastructure for the use of mankind, right? And so I figure I would give you guys a quick introduction of what Sherwood Design Engineers is all about, what we do, and then I'll follow over to a resume discussion so that we can focus on the conversation at hand. I'm going to fly through these slides very quickly because I want to focus on the resume part. So Sherwood, we are a forward-thinking firm. We have our vision and values in collaboration really are at the core of what we do and how we establish our services back in 2003. A little bit of an anecdote in 2003, when the company was being founded, I was just starting my career in 2004, actually. So it's kind of almost the company was born at the same time that my career started in civil engineering, not knowing that eventually I was going to make my way to it. We're about 90 plus folks. I think we're very, very close to 100. It's spread over 7 offices. I'm based out of the Los Angeles office, so we have our studio space in the Arts District. Really cool office space. If ever get a chance to bring you guys come and visit us. How do we approach design? Really is thinking about the environment and what ecology means to the place, being creative, and then applying math and science engineering, right? And if we bring these 3 elements together, I'd like to think about site development in a completely different approach, a little bit different than what would be traditional, just design and build. At the core of it, we're a full civil engineering firm, so anything from road design to infrastructure planning and engineering, to looking at ecological systems and how they can better serve our clients and our communities, whoever the stakeholders are, really. We have quite a variety of projects from urban development, hospitality, residential, university work, college campuses. My most recent one that I got a chance to work on was a master planning effort at UC Irvine. So that was relatively recent project, I would say. And then starting to look at things at UCLA as well. So really having an opportunity to work on anything from a small project to a larger campus university projects. I'm not going to bore you guys with all the things that are listed on here, but these are some of our services: infrastructure planning and engineering, site buildings, civil engineering, ecological systems planning engineering, water resources, and then water resources engineering and sustainable system design, in land analysis, opportunities and constraints. So, the core of this here is basically that this is the civil engineering plus that we bring to the table as we're serving our clients and stakeholders. We have a very close connection to academia with our CEO and founder being basically the authority, one of the authorities in the industry, right, and developing sustainable infrastructure book as well as the water infrastructure. It really bringing how we see water at the core of all the projects that we work on. It doesn't matter if we're working on a project in downtown LA or if we're working on a farm in Sonoma County. It's all water ends up being at the core of what we do. And then we're very, very proud to have an innovation lab, which is basically our own team up in our headquarters in San Francisco, who is in charge of basically infusing technology and a different approach of how we look at projects. And just flying through this, and these are some of our clients, like I said, developers, corporate campuses, universities, public agencies, and a number of design partners. And these are some of our studios. I'm gonna stop there. That's all about Sherwood, but I'm gonna focus now on the resume component. And for that, I'm gonna bring in my own resume. And one thing I would start by saying is that resume development, resume setup ends up being, in some ways, very subjective. So a lot of the things that I'm going to share with you is what I've learned, what has been shared with me over time, and it's also about how it has worked for me. Some of these things, there might be other people out there that might tell you that you don't need an objective, and that's okay. That's okay, because you don't necessarily need an objective per se, right? It depends on what your training is and in what industry you might be. So what I'm going to share with you is a little bit of what's on what I typically look for as I'm working on recruiting. Basically, one of the biggest first things that I look for in a resume is formatting. Number one thing, really making sure that there's a consistency in format, right? From having these headers bolded and also they're consistently the indentation is consistent, right? There's no gaps.
Jimmy, I'm so sorry to cut you off. We still see your PowerPoint, and it looks like maybe you also want to share your resume. So I think you might have to restart the share. Of course. Sorry to interrupt.
The wonders of Zoom. How about now?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. So so just pretend I started with this. And what I was trying to convey is that, like I said, resume development, resume setup can be subjective, and you might hear differently from others, and that's okay. It's just that they're exposed to a different approach. It doesn't necessarily make it incorrect, but what I'm going to share with you guys is it's a bit of what I've picked up along the way has been shared with me. Like I said, some people might, this is what I was pointing to earlier, some folks might ask you that you don't need necessarily an objective, right? If you have a cover letter per se, right? But talking about the things that I typically look for when I'm talking to candidates and interviewing really is one, look at format. Are these main headers or sections bolded, and am I staying consistent throughout the things that I'm trying to describe, right? Indentation, is it cleanly indented, and am I being consistent, right, between what I'm describing? You guys notice on here, I basically use the name of the company, which office, and that's basically the process that I followed. Company in which office I worked at, company in which office I worked at, and then on the very right, the dates. So in terms of format, that just staying consistent. And then when I go to the description, right, an overall description um, of the role that I'm playing, and basically staying consistent through the document as well, doing that for the other engagements. Um, you know, there's rules of thumb, right, of things that some folks like to see. Some companies want to see GPA, others don't. Some of the larger, full transparency, and what I've come across is that some of the larger corporations, larger companies, right, ask for a GPA because they get so many resumes, and that's their way of bringing a list down. If you can imagine, you are an HR individual and you have a list of 5,000 resumes, right? How do you bring that 5,000 into a number that they can actually process? And the challenge is you might get 5,000 resumes, but you might only have 200 positions, right? And so how does that list of individuals really bring? How do you bring that number down in order to make it work to the positions that are available? And so that's where it's really is worth paying attention as to what that industry is that you're working with, right? Who you're sending the resume to. It's one of the things I typically like to do. Like I said, this resume format has worked very well for me in civil engineering, but it might not necessarily be the resume that, say, somebody in computer science is looking for, right? So one piece of advice that I would share is get connected with people in those industries to make sure that you're tailoring your resume to what is expected that you're going to get. Still staying in the civil engineering side is I had an objective in my resume because I typically would not necessarily, depending on the company I was applying for, I may or may not have a cover letter. Some companies required it, and so the objective was just a way of describing, hey, I'm looking for an opportunity in civil and structural engineering, right? Then it's pretty standard, like I said, to have your education, and if you have a related certification, like it's your like in my case, I have the professional engineer's license. That's something that I list at the top, and the reality is in the construction industry, there's a lot of folks that speak Spanish. One, because there's a lot of folks that speak Spanish in the construction sites, or some of the project work that we do in Latin America is really speaking Spanish, right? So I have that as a listed item on them. And then just kind of going through the progression of showing your involvement in the different companies that you work with. I'll say this right now. Back in 2004, when I started my career, my resume, one, didn't look like this, and two, it didn't have. Obviously, I was just starting my career, so it didn't have it didn't have all this engineering experience. And so what I did is I actually took those summer internships or even those jobs that did not relate to engineering, and I tailored them to fit what I was trying to go after, right? So I worked in the food service industry. So what I did is I was very descriptive as to placing, you know, showcasing what I bring to the table, right? The ability, say, to place large scale orders and track systems in the food service company that I work for, right? That shows my ability to do so and translate that into whatever position I'm tailoring. The other thing is I would say is so. Well, let me before I go there is this obviously talks a lot about the different organizations I work with, right? I've all the way back to my internships with the city of San Diego back in when I was in college. Uh, you know, and also the other things I had on here is computer applications and and my involvement with professional organizations, as I share with about my involvement with ASCE and SHEP, and then your special interests. What I would say is remember that the resume is it's a 1 to 2 page summary of who you are, and it's only a document to get you in the door. So don't feel like you have to fit everything on there. The idea is to invite a conversation, right? So if a recruiter is looking at my resume and they have, say, for example, a position on bridge engineering, they're going to say, "Oh, I see that your interest, you list bridges. What about bridges brings your attention, or what about professional organizations catches your attention, right? In terms of your involvement, right? So really look at the resume as this vehicle to invite a conversations, right? So that when you do get invited to that interview, you are uh, 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 you are piquing the interest of that recruiter as to why they should bring you into their company, into their organization. Um, the other thing is really, in general, is tailoring your resume for the position that you're going after. Uh, you would think, hey, Jimmy, you're a civil engineer, so you have one resume. I'll uh, I will say this: don't be shy about having multiple versions of your resume. I think I went back in time and I counted. I have like 14 different versions of my resume where I basically tailor them to what I'm looking for. Right? Um, not all of them say civil and structural engineering as my objective, or maybe I don't necessarily want to highlight. Maybe I don't necessarily want to highlight the internships I had. Maybe I want to highlight my project management experience. Right? Is really preparing a document that's going to again be that opener of the conversation to explore opportunities with the company. So don't be shy about having different versions. Um, so um, um, the only one thing that I would add to this as well, hopefully my screen sharing will work this time, is that in this day and age, right, the resume is just one part of the equation in being connected to or looking to be connected with companies, recruiters, and HR folks. Um, but the other thing that I, as a recruiter, once we get resumes, we look at them together and say, have a meeting with different teams that are interested in individuals, right? And say, all right, let's go to the next step, right? And again, different companies have different policies, but one of the things that I like to look at is, let me see if, is the candidate's LinkedIn account. And so, making sure that there's consistency between what you're showing in your resume versus what's on your LinkedIn account, right? That long description that Shelby shared about me at the beginning of this presentation, it's literally pulled out of my LinkedIn account, and that's purposeful because one, that's my description of who I am in the professional environment, right, and who and how I present myself to companies, partners, and in this case with you guys, right? But it's really about sharing what my image is about, and then my project experience is all listed on here by the same positions, same companies I worked at, the engineering, the internships, my education, and so on, right? My involvement with professional organizations. Literally, my digital version of my resume is on. Cool thing is that LinkedIn lets you put in like a cool cover page. Say, for example, this is one of my favorite projects that I worked on. So it gives you another dimension, right? And then there's other people that get really creative and also have a personal website. I've never had a website. I thought about having one. But if you wanted to create say, for example, use the website as a portfolio of work, right? Where you showcase your special projects that obviously you're going to build your resume, right? So if I was to put a website together, I would put a website that had the links to some of my favorite projects that I worked on in my career. But for you guys in college, it would be about, hey, what are some of the key projects that you worked in your school assignments that can show a recruiter what you're about and what you've been working on, right? The idea is create as many channels of sharing who you are, so that you can stand amongst that pack of presidents, right? So I'll stop there. I'll put a pause there. Are there any questions I can answer? Or
All right, everybody, this is your opportunity to put questions in the chat. We also put some links in the chat for you. If you don't have a resume yet, there's a link to career services. They also have LinkedIn workshops. So it's great that Jimmy brought that up. And I do see a question. I'll go ahead and read it. I noticed he has more than one page, and most of the time they say to use just one page. Does this depend on major or experience years?
I would say that it depends more on the type of work that you've been working on, the position that you're working on, and the number of years, right? Rule of thumb that has been shared with me is if you're somewhere between 0 to 7, 8 years of experience, one page, right? If you're 10 years plus, 2 pages. I had a friend of mine, she had been working in the industry for about 30 years. So her resume was, I think, about 4 pages long, right? The question is making sure that you are, one, you're connecting with your industry, right? The industry that you're going after and what the expectation is, right? Like I said, as a recruiter, I typically, if you're in college, a page will do it, right? And then I did have a candidate. She had about a page and a half. She had worked at a couple of places, but she did all this extensive work in engineering projects in Africa as a volunteer and in Latin America, right? So she had just a really really cool experience that was relevant to what she was going after, right? So it's also about not just filling up space, it's also about what you're trying to communicate, right? So if I might summarize, one page should do it, but if you're going to go over a page, just make sure that it gives that is providing more value, or let me rephrase that not value, but a description of the work that you're trying to apply.
Thank you. That was a great answer. I realized I forgot, so I'm going to turn off the recording.